Michael's baby turned 1 month old, and a celebration was planned. I was invited to Regina's parents' home. How adorable! Just like an angel. The moment I reached out to the baby's tiny fist, Regina shouted, "Don't touch the baby if you're a stranger." I withdrew my hand in surprise and protested, "I'm Michael's mother. I'm the grandma of this child." "So?" Regina smiled mischievously. "To me, you're a stranger. You're just someone unnecessary once I've gotten the congratulatory money." "That's terrible. You're stingy, just like your deli. It doesn't seem like we'll need anything from you in the future. So, this is where our relationship ends. Don't show your gloomy face around us again. We don't want your poverty rubbing off on our family." I was momentarily taken aback, but quickly responded with a smile. "All right then." Leaving me at the entrance, Regina went back inside. In my heart, I declared war. If that's the attitude you're going to take, I have my plans too. You'll regret this later. I am Margaret, a 55-year-old housewife. Shortly after my eldest son, Michael, started elementary school, I lost my husband. Determined to support Michael through college, I decided to work harder. I quit my part-time job and, using the money my husband had left, started a small delicatessen. Thanks to working tirelessly every day, the deli gradually became successful. And I was able to send Michael to college. When Michael was a child, I was too busy with daily life. We hardly ever had the luxury to go to theme parks or play in the park on weekends like other families. I felt guilty for not being able to give him more attention, fearing I was a failure as a parent. But Michael grew up to be a compassionate person, which relieved me. Michael, who landed a job at a big company, moved out to live on his own. Though he lived in the city, he would come to visit with a bright smile during long weekends. When he got used to his job, he called me one day saying, "There's someone I want you to meet," which excited me. However, I felt anxious as well as happy when Michael brought the young lady home. She was the daughter of the well-known Tucker Industries. I was nervous, thinking it was about making Michael a successor. But it turned out her cousin was set to take over and was already the vice president. Michael's wife, Regina, graduated from a university that only heiresses attend and is currently practicing to be a housewife at her parents' home. "Nice to meet you. Let's get along well, Margaret." The first time we met, she grabbed my hand and vigorously shook it. I could tell she was well-bred from her dining manners and behavior. But her unrestrained and flashy personality made me feel we wouldn't get along. But since Michael chose her, I wanted to get along well. I decided to make an effort to become closer. However, my feelings were quickly trampled upon after they got married. Regina was chatty and had a bright personality. That sounds nice, but her conversations revolved around neighborhood gossip, celebrity news, and speaking ill of acquaintances. The biggest issue was the timing of her visits. She would show up unannounced right when I got back from work and started preparing dinner. Naturally, I ended up inviting her to eat. I don't have any morning sickness at all. I can eat anything. Beer's okay too. You shouldn't drink alcohol if you're pregnant. Really? Is that so? Regina's surprised look made me anxious. When she told me she was pregnant, I was as happy as if it were my own news. But Regina seemed to lack awareness as a pregnant woman or had little prior knowledge. And despite claiming she could eat anything, her likes and dislikes were strong. She disliked fish for being too fishy and would only eat meat from certain brands. For dessert after dinner, she wanted expensive fruits like Japanese shine muscat grapes and muskmelons. Moreover, she had a habit of rating the meals after eating. 65 points. Not great. 93 points, could use more spice. Today is 100 points. Amazing, you passed. Congratulations. I forced a smile at her full-faced grin. Regina, why do you rate every meal? She said with a broad smile. I'm doing you a favor, practicing. If you can't satisfy your daughter-in-law, your deli might as well shut down. I've been running it for 20 years in downtown, you know. My sarcasm didn't land. It only takes a moment to go under. I wouldn't want to take care of an unemployed Margaret. So, you better work hard. I'm only 55, yet she treats me like an old lady. Though she seems well-meaning, her constant superior attitude and offensive remarks are infuriating. Having these exchanges 4 or 5 times a week is exhausting. And using her pregnancy as an excuse, she won't even clear the table after eating. Lounging on the sofa with her phone instead. She wouldn't budge, so when I tried to relax with a beer and TV, she complained. Margaret, that's terrible. Drinking in front of me, is this harassment? Go to your room. I just want to enjoy a drink while watching TV dramas. Why don't you watch on your mobile phone? You're so inconsiderate. I want to watch on a big screen, not a tiny one. And why do I have to take this from my daughter-in-law? When my irritation reached its peak, Regina packs up Michael's share of dinner, smiles, and leaves. Exhausted, I bathe early and head to bed. Casually asking how they manage weekend dinners, she unabashedly says they use delivery. Deli items, or ready meals. I'm not good at housework. But I want Michael to eat delicious meals. It would really help if Margaret could prepare weekend dinners too. I ignored her audacious request. I'm happy Regina comes to visit, but I'm also tired from work. Maybe just once a week would be better? When I couldn't take it anymore and complained to Michael over the phone, this was his response. Regina's morning sickness is really bad, and she can't do anything at home. I'm swamped with overtime, so I can only help out with the chores on weekends. She's lying down all the time at your place, right? Having Mom watch over Regina makes me feel relieved. It's her first pregnancy, so she's probably anxious. Please overlook her rudeness. All right, I understand. It seems Regina plays the role of a frail pregnant woman in front of Michael. I strongly wanted to show him how she lies on the sofa, laughing while watching videos. But doing so would disappoint kind-hearted Michael and make him feel guilty towards me. Regina is taking advantage of me, knowing I wouldn't do such a thing. That part again irritates me. Though I'm not fond of Regina, I'm looking forward to meeting my grandchild and want to maintain a good relationship with Michael as before. So, I decided not to meddle too much and warmly watch over Michael and his family. I shouldn't impose my opinions on naming the grandchild or insist on living together because he's the eldest son. Instead, when Regina asked, I helped with buying baby supplies, accompanied her to prenatal checkups, and even to church to pray, serving as a dedicated bag carrier. As a grandma, I was eager to help in any way possible. But Regina's attitude grew increasingly overbearing. Lately, she even orders large furniture to be delivered to our home, right in front of me. Margaret, what do you think of this? It's expensive. Shall I buy it for you? Offering to buy it was my downfall. After that, she started asking for expensive baby items one after another. Imported items are more stylish, right? It would be really nice to have a matching set. Regina, why not rent items that are only used for a short period? There are affordable and durable domestic brands too. I couldn't help but suggest, and Regina glared at me sharply. Margaret, don't you want to give your grandchild the best? There's no end to luxury. So, you just don't want to spend the money, huh? Oh, how dreadful. Dad or Mom would easily shell out $100,000. I thought, why not ask your dad or mom then? But it seems she has no intention of relying on her parents. Margaret, you can't take your money to the grave. Let's spend it generously without being stingy. Her words were so rude that I was at a loss for words. I felt my face heat up with anger, and I almost yelled back, "Mind your own business." No, that's not right. Causing a scene would put Michael in a difficult position, which would be unfair to him. Struggling to control my anger, I tried to speak calmly. Anyway, let's use rental services for things we can. Savings have their limits. All right, I understand. Regina reluctantly agreed, though she seemed dissatisfied. My relief was short-lived when Michael called me in the evening. Regina was asking Mom for various baby items? Yes, well. Sorry. I thought she was buying them with the money I've been giving her. I was surprised when I saw the sudden increase in high-brand baby clothes and toys. I could tell Michael was confused over the phone. Did she make you spend a lot? Should I pay you back? No, it's fine. I was planning to buy her some things anyway. Really sorry. Regina wanted a girl, and when we found out at the hospital, she got carried away. I thought it was more than just getting carried away, but I refrained from speaking ill of Regina and stopped arguing. It's nice that it's a girl as she wanted. Being a lady, she just has a different sense of money from us. But I don't think she means any harm. I'll tell her not to burden Mom anymore. Please do. After hanging up, I sighed. I understand the desire to gather cute baby items. Still, it would be common sense to show a little restraint. After that, Michael must have talked to her because Regina stopped asking for expensive baby items altogether. I wished she would stop coming altogether, but Regina kept showing up as if nothing happened. Lately, she seemed to have shifted her strategy to asking for small amounts of money. Thinking if not large sums, then small ones might work. Look, I can't work because I'm pregnant, so I have no money. But I'm scared Michael will lose interest if I don't keep up appearances. It's okay for someone old like Margaret, but I'm young and want to be loved. Of course, I had no intention of giving her a penny. Why don't you ask Michael for more allowance? He'd listen, right? I can't do that. It would sound like I'm blaming his salary. Regina pouted, snacking on some treats. Being a manager at a major company at 30, he earns more than most of his peers. But my dad earns more. Oh, sorry. The words "then ask your dad" almost slipped out, but I held back with all my might. Regina always carried a high-brand bag and wore well-tailored maternity wear. Wanting more despite getting a hefty allowance seemed too selfish. It's not that I think pregnant women shouldn't dress well or housewives should look shabby. But begging your mother-in-law for money is definitely wrong. Though I was upset, looking at Regina's swollen belly calmed my anger. Soon, I'll meet the baby. The thought of becoming a grandma soon tickles me. In that aspect, I'm thankful to Regina. When my sister-in-law, Chelsea, came over the weekend and I vented to her, she was outraged. The worst daughter-in-law ever. She's taking advantage of you too much. Michael should speak up. Do you think so? I smiled at Chelsea's indignation. But I think once the baby is born, her rude behavior towards me will get better. It's not just maternity blues, it's her character. Don't get your hopes up. Maybe. But I get along with Michael, and I don't want to ruin their marriage. Chelsea sighed in frustration. Don't keep it all to yourself. I'm here to listen to your complaints anytime. Thanks, Chelsea. I smiled at Chelsea. For now, let's just pray that the baby is born safely. Eventually, Regina gave birth without any issues. I wanted to meet the baby, but since she went straight to her parents' house after being discharged, I decided to wait until Regina was feeling better. Michael, stopping by Regina's parents' house after work, sends me pictures of the baby daily. I can only imagine how adorable the baby must be in person, and my anticipation grows. When the baby was about a month old, Michael contacted me. Regina wants to have a baby reveal party. A reveal party? Yeah, at her parents' house, inviting relatives. Can we invite our side too? Thomas and the others are on board. That sounds good. Why not invite the same group as we did for the wedding? I'll do that. Then, I'll start reaching out. My relatives all live in the same state. They love events, so they'd be happy to come. As expected, when I informed them of the date, they all wanted to come. On the day, I arrived a bit early with a gift for the baby, intending to greet Regina's parents first. I rang the doorbell of the grand house, surrounded by a high fence, and a mature woman's voice responded. The parents were often away for work, so a housekeeper was always there. The person who came to the door must have been her. As I reached the grand entrance along the slope, Regina, in a floral dress, greeted me at the foyer, holding the innocent baby in her arms. Dad and Mom got called into sudden work, so they're not back yet. Busy even on a Sunday. I greeted and was about to enter when Regina coldly asked, "The gift for the baby?" "Oh, yes, here." Handing the baby to the waiting housekeeper, Regina watched as I searched my bag. She snatched the envelope as I pulled it out and opened it right there. "Are we checking gifts in front of everyone?" Ignoring my surprise, Regina pulled out the contents and frowned in displeasure. $1,000? That's too little. I thought that was the going rate. At least $50,000 should be in there. Well, can't expect much from poor people. As Regina put the gift back into the envelope, the housekeeper stood behind her, holding the baby, who yawned adorably. Drawn by the baby's cuteness, I approached the housekeeper. How adorable, just like an angel. As I reached out to the baby's tightly clenched little fist. Don't touch the baby if you're a stranger. Startled by the sudden shout, I pulled my hand back. As the baby began to cry, Regina commanded the housekeeper. Take him to his room, now. Yes. After the housekeeper took the baby away, I protested to Regina. I am Michael's mother. I'm the grandma of this child. So? Regina smirked mischievously. To me, you're a stranger. You're just someone unnecessary once I've gotten the congratulatory money. That's terrible. You're stingy, just like your deli. It doesn't seem like we'll need anything from you in the future. So, this is where our relationship ends. She fluttered her hand, shooing me away. Thanks for your efforts. You can go home now. Don't ever show me that gloomy face again. We don't want your poverty rubbing off on our family. I was momentarily shocked, but quickly responded with a smile. All right then. Leaving me at the entrance, Regina went back inside. Her words kept swirling in my head. This was the first time in my life I had been subjected to such a terrible humiliation. Why do I have to be spoken to like this by my daughter-in-law? Clenching my fists as if my bones would crush, I declared war in my heart. If that's the attitude you're going to take, I have my plans too. You'll regret this later. When I opened the front door, my relatives were crossing the garden, coming my way. Huh? Margaret, are you leaving already? Regina, who came out to greet them, smiled at the puzzled relatives. Margaret has some errands to run. Dinner is about to arrive. You could have stayed and eaten with us. She's in a hurry. Welcome everyone. It seems Michael and his parents will be a little while longer. Please make yourselves comfortable in the meantime. Regina ushered the relatives inside, closed the front door, and immediately locked it. Regina, who is good at putting on a facade, is popular with our relatives. At my husband's anniversary memorial, she went around pouring drinks for the older men, introducing herself. Despite being beautiful and wealthy, her cheerful and friendly demeanor left a very good impression. So, no one doubted Regina's words this time. I decided to resort to my last option. I headed somewhere. 2 hours later, I pressed Regina's family's doorbell again. In front of the relatives, Regina, who reluctantly let me in, whispered to me irritably. "Why did you come back?" "I forgot something important." "Huh? Oh, you brought the rest of the congratulatory money." Such a small amount was indeed embarrassing. Passing by the smirking Regina, I proceeded down the hall filled with lively voices. Opening the door, I found a spacious dining room where both families were gathered around a huge table. Although Regina's parents and Michael were nowhere to be seen, the table was laden with appetizers, and the relatives were happily sharing beer and wine. "Margaret, you came back. Come over here. We have bourbon and cocktails too. Why not have the housekeeper bring some?" I smiled at the beckoning relatives. "Thank you, Trevor. But before that, I have something I'd like to reveal too." "Oh, what's that? A surprise gift?" To Regina's nonchalant question, I responded just as pleasantly. "Yes, a surprise. Now, everyone, please listen." Clapping my hands, I silenced the chatter of the relatives and opened the voice recording app on my mobile phone, pressing play. "Don't touch the baby if you're a stranger." Regina's shout echoed in the suddenly quiet room. "Is that Regina's voice?" The room buzzed with confusion. "Once you've given the congratulatory money, you're unnecessary. With your stingy delicatessen, we won't need anything from you in the future. So, this is where our relationship ends. Don't ever show that gloomy face again. We don't want your poverty rubbing off on our family." No matter how many times I hear it, it's a terrible line. It seems I'm not the only one who thinks so, as the women in the family began to criticize Regina. "Even if a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law are traditionally at odds, this is too much. Margaret raised Michael alone while running the delicatessen, enduring so much. To belittle her like this is unforgivable. What's this? Just because her parents are wealthy, she acts so haughty. Such a nasty daughter-in-law." Not just my relatives, but even Regina's family expressed their anger. "To say such things to your mother-in-law is unbelievable." "We're so sorry for our Regina. This is embarrassing for us too." Being spoiled as a lady is one thing, but doesn't she know the difference between right and wrong? At her age, such lack of manners. Faced with the cold stares of the relatives, Regina showed panic. Her cheeks twitching, she hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Stop joking around, Margaret. Oh, I get it. You're jealous because Michael always defends me, so you made this up." Regina covered her face with her hands and started to fake cry. "I've tried so hard to get along with Margaret, and this is how she treats me? That's cruel." The women all had faces of disbelief. However, the men were easily deceived, looking confused and at each other. "Come on, that's too harsh. Yeah, ganging up on her. Poor thing, she started crying. Margaret, what's the meaning of this?" Are you acting spitefully because Michael chose Regina? It's always the mother-in-law bullying the daughter-in-law, isn't it? Everyone knows Regina is a good girl. Don't pull such pranks, Margaret. The men quickly sided with Regina, who must have been inwardly mocking them. Then the women exploded in anger. Good girl? When we had a gathering at Margaret's, she refused to help in the kitchen, escaping to the dining area. Ignored calls for help, flirting with the men all the time. Right. When we were supposed to bring dishes for the meal, she lied about injuring her hand and brought store-bought items, then had the audacity to claim hers was the best. Men are really weak against this type of girl. No eye for character. The dining room turned into a battleground of men versus women, mixing my relatives with Regina's. The once lively dining room was now filled with a tense atmosphere. As the housekeeper, flustered, brought in more beer, the doorbell rang. Chelsea entered the dining room, guided by the housekeeper. With a thick, bulging envelope of congratulatory money in her hand, catching Regina's eye. Chelsea, welcome, and thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. Here's the congratulatory money. Oh! Chelsea deliberately let the envelope slip from her hand, scattering its contents across the table. Oh dear, I forgot to seal it. Sorry about that. Huh? Who's that in the picture with Regina? A relative picked up a photo, murmuring suspiciously. Regina turned around in shock. But before Regina could collect the photos, several relatives grabbed them, exclaiming in unison. Whoa! This looks like evidence of an affair. It was a sight one would want to look away from. Photos captured Regina being hugged by an unknown man, kissing as she got out of a car, and entering a hotel together. As the relatives were shocked, Regina hurriedly tried to explain. It's not what it looks like. He's just an acquaintance. He loves physical affection. And the hotel, he said he felt sick, so I accompanied him inside. Her excuses sounded incredibly feeble. Even the men who had defended Regina were now giving her cold looks. As if delivering the final blow, Chelsea turned on a voice recorder. And a conversation between Regina and the man played out. Can't wait for my child to be born. It's a hassle if your wife finds out, so let's just say it's Michael's and mine, okay? Shame, but we have no choice. He's so dumb, thinking you're just a friend. Hilarious. We can get away with it since Michael and I have the same blood type from our college days. What if the child looks just like you? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Their laughter ended the recording. Regina, pale-faced, turned to Chelsea. Why do you have this? Oh, didn't I mention? I run a private investigation firm. Chelsea smiled slightly. Margaret asked me to look into you because of your reckless spending and suspicious behavior. And, as expected, it turned out to be an affair. I intended to keep this to myself to avoid ruining the marriage. But seeing no change in your attitude, Regina, I thought you deserved a punishment. Regina glared at me with a venomous look. So, it was your doing. As Regina lunged at me, Chelsea quickly grabbed her arm, stepping in between. Shaking off Chelsea's grip, Regina threatened in a low voice. Remember, keep quiet about this to Michael. It would be pitiful for the child to be abandoned by Dad right after being born. Everyone agrees, right? Her self-serving logic was astounding, but Regina desperately sought agreement from the relatives. Michael loves children, and if he remains unaware, he'll adore this child. So, let's keep this a secret, okay? A deep, resonant voice froze everyone, including Regina and me. Looking towards the source, we saw Michael standing at the doorway. It seemed he had entered the house with Chelsea and had been eavesdropping from the hallway. Michael! Approaching Regina, Michael looked at her with disdain and angrily retorted. We used to go out for drinks, the four of us, including his wife, before Regina got pregnant. I never imagined you two were meeting alone afterwards. Laughing at me, both of you. I'm sorry. Please, don't talk about divorce. Regina pleaded with puppy eyes, but Michael shouted back. Of course we're getting a divorce. Insulting not just me but also my mom, unforgivable. Michael and Regina glared at each other for a while, but eventually, Regina was the first to back down. Fine, we can get a divorce. But I'm keeping custody of the child. I've always wanted a child. Even at this point, she insisted as if she had done nothing wrong. What an audacious woman. The relatives watched the exchange between Regina and Michael, tense. With clasped hands and a dreamy expression, Regina began to speak. I think the child will look like me and be incredibly beautiful. Then I'll dress her in stylish clothes and take her everywhere. A young and beautiful me with a cute daughter. We could become famous as a beautiful mother-daughter duo. She's definitely going to be a model or actress someday. I'm so glad I had a daughter. Hey, children aren't accessories. Are you raising her just to show off? That's pitiful for the child. Being a single mother is tough. Do you understand what it entails to work and raise a child? At my words, Regina laughed in a high-pitched tone. Who do you think I am? I'm the daughter of Tucker Industries. Unlike your delicatessen, I have endless money. My dad and mom will help, and with housekeepers and babysitters, I won't have to care for the child. I can live leisurely without working hard. After boasting, she twisted her lips into a sneer. Well, being from a single-parent family might be disadvantageous for school applications. So I plan to remarry someone suitable. Next time, not a company employee but a handsome CEO of an IT company. Such a man would let me have more freedom to play. Seems like it, Mr. Tucker. Chelsea called out, and Regina's parents appeared from the back door. Shocked and speechless, Chelsea explained to us. Actually, the Tuckers asked me to investigate Regina's behavior. They pretended to go to work today but stayed hidden, wanting to expose Regina's true nature. She had always worn a mask in front of her parents. The Tucker couple stepped into the center of the room and bowed deeply to us. Everyone, we apologize for the disturbance Regina has caused. We don't know how to make it up to Michael and Margaret. With a pained expression, they looked at Regina. Regina, now as pale as paper, was trembling. Thomas, Regina's father, sighed deeply and lamented in a low voice. To betray Margaret like this. I'm ashamed of my own daughter. But... Regina suddenly looked up at her father. Moving closer with tearful eyes and a sweet tone, starting to make excuses. I was bullied by Margaret. There's no proof, no images or recordings, but she said many mean things to me. It hurt, so I retaliated. Dad, you believe me, right? As I was about to argue, Regina's mother, Selena, sharply said. Lies! Margaret isn't like that. Selena turned to me and declared. As a fan of that shop, I can't accept what you've said. Take it back. What? Regina, wide-eyed, listened as Thomas explained. Selena and I are regulars at Margaret's Delicatessen. We often rely on it for business trips and dining with clients. For mom friends' home parties, we order delivery. That way, I only need to make desserts. The dishes with organic vegetables are famous for being healthy and delicious. I've known Margaret since before Michael's marriage. Haven't I mentioned it before? Eh? Really? Regina, sweating profusely. She had likely been tuning it out. Selena, with a look of disgust, turned to Regina and said, "We've overlooked your whims to some extent until now, but this time, your behavior towards Michael and Margaret is inexcusable." Exactly. Casually lying, demeaning others. After having an affair, you plan to raise another man's child as Michael's. That's the lowest of the low. Thomas glared at Regina with icy eyes and firmly declared, "We're disowning you as of today." What? That's troubling. What am I supposed to do starting tomorrow? Figure it out yourself. You're 30, aren't you? How long do you plan to depend on others? Why don't you remarry him? He's the real dad, right? That's impossible. He said he wouldn't leave his wife. Oh no. I don't want to work. Regina let out a pitiful cry. Michael, I'm sorry. It was all my fault. Regina started to deeply apologize at mine and Michael's feet. Margaret, I'm sorry for everything. Please forgive me. Mom, let's go home. We should get our congratulatory money back. There's no obligation to pay it to a complete stranger. Yes, let's do that. I'll take mine back too. Me too, I've lost my appetite. Michael took the envelope from the black tray, and the other relatives followed suit. If it's not Michael's child, there's no need for a gift. Right, it's ridiculous. I thought it was a chance to make some pocket money by exploiting the baby. As Regina crumbled to her knees, the relatives, without a glance in her direction, left the meal and the celebration came to a miserable end. The room was left with scattered dishes, half-drunk beverages, and meals, marking the desolate conclusion of the reveal party. Unwilling to work, Regina cried and refused the divorce but was persuaded by the Tuckers to reluctantly sign. The compensation for the divorce lawsuit was fronted by her parents. Afterward, Regina was kicked out of her home. She moved into an apartment with moving and initial costs borrowed from her parents, starting to live alone. The Tuckers decided they couldn't leave the baby with Regina and chose to raise it themselves. They also demanded child support and recognition from the baby's father, who complied. Regina, who had lived a life of leisure, must be struggling with her first part-time job. After all, she has to pay back her parents for the moving expenses and compensation, in addition to her living costs. Regina, now deprived of the luxury to dress fashionably or enjoy leisure activities, seems to be working desperately every day, her hair disheveled. Though Michael and I have cut ties with Regina, our relationship with the Tucker couple continues. After the reveal party, the parents came to me with an apology gift. We were wrong in how we raised her. We're terribly sorry to both Michael and Margaret. Their tearful apologies eased some of my unresolved anger. Thankfully, they continue to frequent the delicatessen, which has thrived on word of mouth and has more customers now than it did 10 years ago. I'm currently busy preparing for the opening of a second location. Michael, too, seems to have regained his spirits and is diligently working. Both of us are living busy yet fulfilling lives. Someday, if fate allows and Michael has his own child, we plan to shower that child with endless love. How could I possibly receive a letter from Diana who has passed away? I was staring in shock at an envelope in my mailbox at home. The letter was from my mother-in-law Diana, whose funeral we had just finished yesterday. Diana had always been so kind to me since the beginning of my marriage, and I adored her. We often dined out together and enjoyed shopping, becoming close friends despite the age difference. I was heartbroken when Diana passed away suddenly. Even after the funeral, I couldn't fully accept the reality of her death. So, when a letter from Diana arrived, I was incredibly surprised. Rushing to read it, I found something totally unexpected. Firstly, the reason this letter came to me seems to be that Diana had asked the church's pastor to deliver this letter to me after her passing. It instructed me to open the closet in Diana's room at my in-laws' house, revealing a secret door. The letter detailed how to open this secret door. And at the end, it instructed me to open it alone. Checking the time, I knew that Jimmy, Diana's brother-in-law who lived with her, his wife, and their kids would all be out at school or work. I headed straight to my in-laws' house, used my key to get inside, and followed Diana's instructions to open the secret door in her closet by myself. Thank goodness, it opened! Relieved that it opened successfully, I checked what was inside. What is this? My name is Olivia. I'm a 35-year-old web designer working remotely. 5 years ago, I married Fred, who is 4 years older than me, introduced by a friend, and we still have a great relationship. However, we don't have any children yet. Both of us love kids and wanted to have them as soon as we got married, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to conceive. There was a time when I was deeply troubled and depressed about not being able to have children, but there was someone who always treated me kindly. That was my mother-in-law, Diana. Olivia, don't overthink it. There's no need to rush. How about we go to the new waffle shop by the station to change your mood? Diana always encouraged me and spoke kindly to me. She was bright, kind, and empathetic. I loved her for that. Diana saved me many times, and gradually, I worried less about not having children. My desire for children hasn't changed, but we've decided not to undergo serious fertility treatments and let nature take its course. My husband, Fred, often travels for work, so when Fred is away, Diana and I would go out for meals or shopping, just like friends despite our age difference. Diana lived close to where Fred and I lived, in the same house as my brother-in-law, Jimmy, and his family, who have 3 children. Though Diana seemed to get along well with Jimmy's family, Jimmy and his wife often hurled insults at us for not having children. Olivia, still no kids? We have 3 adorable ones, you know. It's like you're dishonoring your parents by not having any. Just cut ties with Diana already. Brittany, Jimmy's wife, would say such things with a triumphant look, and Jimmy would join in, mocking us. Brittany's right. Well, Fred has always been a bit of a loser, and even if you had kids, they'd probably be losers too. In the beginning, Fred and I would fight back against their cruel words. But as they never seemed to listen, we gradually stopped responding. We started to avoid Jimmy and his wife as much as possible. They were awful to us, but in front of Diana, they pretended to be nice. So Diana never knew their true nature. We didn't want to worry Diana unnecessarily, so we never told her about Jimmy and his wife's behavior. One holiday, Fred, Diana, and I planned to go out to eat. We headed to the in-laws' house at the agreed time. Usually, Diana would be waiting outside the front door, ready to go, but not this time. Huh? Is Diana not yet ready to go out today? That's unusual. She'll probably come out soon. Fred and I didn't think much of it and waited for Diana to come out. But even after 5 and then 10 minutes, she didn't appear, and she didn't answer her phone either. What's going on with Diana? Getting worried, we decided to ring the in-laws' house doorbell. When there was no response, we used our spare key to enter. Hey, Mom! Fred called out as we entered, but there was no answer. Feeling uneasy, we hurried to find Diana. And discovered her collapsed in a room. Diana! I screamed as I ran to her, and Fred immediately called an ambulance. The in-laws' house was empty, as Jimmy and his family must have been out, leaving no one there but Diana. The ambulance arrived in about 8 minutes, and Diana was immediately taken to the hospital, but unfortunately, she passed away. It was a stroke. Fred and I couldn't accept the sudden departure of Diana from our lives. We both cried so much we thought we might run out of tears. However, there was much to be done, such as preparing for the funeral. We couldn't remain saddened and withdrawn forever. The funeral was to be a small affair with just close relatives and family, with Diana's eldest son, Jimmy, serving as the family representative. For Diana's sake, Fred and I began preparations in coordination with Jimmy. Yet, even as we contacted relatives and met with the church, I sensed an air of reluctance from Jimmy. He didn't seem to mourn Diana's death, but at the funeral, he fulfilled his duties as a family representative, at least minimally. However, after a brief chat with the relatives, I immediately called for Fred. Since I left the gathering so abruptly, the relatives looked at Jimmy with displeasure. Furthermore, at the meal with relatives after the funeral, Jimmy was the first to take his seat and showed no intention of standing up again. Even if Fred made greetings, he just drank beer. Brittany, too, was just drinking beer beside him. So Fred and I hurriedly went around to the relatives, thanking them for coming and sharing memories of Diana. Perhaps influenced by their parents' behavior, Jimmy and Brittany's 3 children were engrossed in their handheld gaming devices. Laughing loudly and playing with each other, an inappropriate behavior for a post-funeral gathering. None of Jimmy's family seemed to mourn Diana's death. The relatives must have sensed their attitude as they avoided speaking with Jimmy and his wife, choosing instead to share their farewells and memories with Fred and me. Even as the relatives' attitudes changed overtly, there was no change in Jimmy's family's behavior. They kept ordering beer after beer, talking about the inheritance and plans for vacationing during their break. It was disrespectful, considering how much Diana had done for them during her life. I couldn't help but look at Jimmy's family with disdain. The next day, Fred left early to take care of various formalities. Alone at home, I went to check the mailbox for the newspaper and noticed an envelope inside. Who could it be from? I picked up the letter to check, and to my surprise, it was addressed to me and the sender was none other than Diana. How could there be a letter from Diana? Surprised, I went back into the living room to open the letter. The letter contained something entirely unexpected. It appeared that Diana had arranged with the church's pastor to send this letter to me after her passing. The letter included instructions to open the closet in Diana's room at the in-laws' house, how to find and open a hidden door within the closet, and the contact information of a lawyer Diana had dealings with. The final instruction was to ensure I opened the closet alone. I read Diana's letter over and over. Though Diana was slender, her handwriting was large and forceful. Indeed, the powerful signature that seemed to embody Diana's very essence made me take a deep, refreshing breath. Deeply moved, I looked at the clock. 9 a.m. The in-laws' house should be empty now. I murmured to myself, quickly got ready, and headed to the in-laws' house. The children should be at school by now, and Jimmy and his spouse likely left early this morning. I saw on Brittany's social media this morning that she and Jimmy were going out together. Despite it being the day after Diana's funeral, they seemed to be sending the kids to school and boasting about enjoying their day off using vacation time. If that post was accurate, no one would be at the in-laws' house. I had to go now. I couldn't be sure when another chance would come. Using my key, I opened the door to the in-laws' house and entered slowly. The absence of Diana's welcoming smile made my heart ache. Holding back the pain in my chest, I went into Diana's room. Opened the closet, and then reached for the hidden door inside, just as the letter had instructed. Thank goodness, it opened. I sighed in relief upon opening it successfully and checked what was inside. There, I found the items mentioned in the letter and an additional document. What is this? Looking at the documents, I felt Diana's love and was on the verge of tears. I wanted to stay and cry, but I knew I had to leave the in-laws' house quickly. It would be disastrous if someone were to come back and see me here. That is because Diana's letter had instructed to do this alone. With the documents in hand, I returned home and contacted the lawyer mentioned in Diana's letter to inform them of her passing. Just as I was about to contact Fred and Jimmy's family to see if we could all get together this weekend, I received a message. It was from Brittany. The message said they had important news and wanted everyone to gather at the in-laws' house this weekend. What could Brittany possibly want to discuss? I have nothing but a bad feeling about this. I was skeptical, but it seemed odd to refuse, so I decided to accept Brittany's suggestion. When Fred and I arrived at the in-laws' house over the weekend, I joined the meeting feeling tense. Jimmy and Brittany were smirking unpleasantly, and their 3 children were not present. Likely left with someone else. As soon as Fred and I sat down, they presented us with a document. This is Diana's will, Brittany declared confidently. The signature on the will was indeed Diana's, and it stated that all her assets were to be inherited by Jimmy and his wife. It says here that we, the couple, are to inherit the entire estate, doesn't it? So, you guys won't get a single cent from the inheritance. Too bad. Jimmy laughed vulgarly, his face twisted in an ugly grin. Fred was perplexed, but I silently stood up and returned with Mr. Smith, the lawyer who had been waiting outside. Who is this? Jimmy and Brittany were confused by the sudden appearance of the lawyer. Fred was also surprised, not knowing the lawyer had been waiting outside. This is Mr. Smith, a lawyer who Diana had been close with for many years. I introduced him briefly, and Jimmy and Brittany's expressions turned to anger. A lawyer? Why did you bring someone like that here? It was Diana's instruction. She wanted Mr. Smith to help with the property settlement agreement to make things smoother. Jimmy shouted, "We don't need a lawyer!" He slammed his hand on the table and gestured to Diana's will with his chin. Mom left a will. We don't need a lawyer with this. At that, Mr. Smith calmly raised his hand. Are you certain this document was entirely written by Diana herself? In response to that question, Jimmy raised his voice. Of course it is. Mr. Smith shook his head sadly at the scene. This cannot be recognized as a valid will. A holographic will must be entirely handwritten by the person themselves. Mr. Smith pointed out that the word will at the beginning and Diana's signature at the end were indeed handwritten. However, the rest of the document looked like it had been printed from a computer. The once noisy living room fell silent. In a panic, Jimmy reached for the will and brought it closer to himself. But that changed nothing. The printed, neat text remained unchanged. The handwriting of the signature and the rest of the document differs. Could this will have been forged? At Mr. Smith's suggestion, Jimmy and Brittany visibly trembled. What are you talking about? We would never do such a thing. Why are you being so paranoid? And even if it was forged, what then? Mr. Smith responded to Brittany's words. Forging a will is a serious crime. Jimmy and Brittany's faces turned pale. They were flustered, shouting incoherences and making excuses. At this moment, Mr. Smith delivered the crucial information. Olivia has a notarial will, so this will is invalid. What? Jimmy and Brittany were astonished, their eyes wide open. What's that? We weren't informed. The letter from Diana that I had received mentioned that a notarial will was hidden behind the secret door in the closet.
We didn't know either until we received a letter recently. Diana revealed the location of this will in it.
The letter contained not only practical matters but also explanations about why the notarial will was made and why it was disclosed to me. Diana had been feeling her health decline recently and prepared a will, but it seems she suspected that Jimmy and his spouse might tamper with it. I had assumed Diana was completely unaware of Jimmy and his spouse's true nature, but it appears Diana had some inkling of their greed for money. The notarial will stated that the estate was to be equally divided between Jimmy and Fred.
What? How could she have prepared something like this?
Jimmy and Brittany were in shock, their eyes wide with astonishment. At that moment, Jimmy seemed to have an epiphany and exclaimed loudly,
"That's right! But the beneficiary of Mom's life insurance is me, isn't it? It must be set to me, the eldest son."
To Jimmy, who was shouting with his eyes blazing, I announced in a cold voice,
"In addition to the notarial will, Diana also entrusted me with a life insurance policy. I am named as the beneficiary."
Inside the hidden door of the closet, there was not only the notarial will but also the life insurance policy. Jimmy and his wife stared at the notarial will and the life insurance policy in disbelief.
"I didn't hear about this. I don't know anything about this."
It's normal not to be notified when the beneficiary of a life insurance policy is changed. Jimmy protested, banging on the table, but Mr. Smith was firm. Fred, looking puzzled, asked me,
"When did Mom entrust Olivia with these? I had no idea. Did she not want to tell me?"
I smiled at Fred and explained,
"It was written in the letter from Diana. She wanted to tell you as well, but it was safer to entrust it to just me to avoid Jimmy and his wife catching on." "I see. You and Mom were really close, after all."
While Fred and I were talking, Brittany interrupted us hysterically.
"I won't accept this. Why should you, who never even showed Diana your children, inherit her estate? This is ridiculous. I can't accept this at all." "That's right. You childless ingrates don't deserve Mom's estate. We lived with her just for the inheritance. It's outrageous to split it. The entire estate should be ours."
Jimmy, too, was red-faced and yelling. Brittany continued with her selfish claims.
"We have 3 children, you know? As compensation for not giving Diana grandchildren, you should relinquish the entire estate to us for our children's future. We, who gave her 3 grandchildren, are far more worthy than you. So, the estate should all be ours."
Unfazed by Brittany's fervor, I calmly stated, "What you're saying is nonsensical. Please calm down." Brittany, infuriated by my composed demeanor, yelled,
"Your smug attitude is infuriating. Just give us the money. Useless woman."
As she screamed, Brittany lunged at me. Fred and Mr. Smith quickly intervened, but Brittany managed to punch me in the head before they could stop her.
"Ouch!"
Brittany's hands, adorned with several large rings, felt like brass knuckles, causing a dull pain that made me cry out.
"Stop it!"
Fred and Mr. Smith pulled Brittany away, but she, still unrestrained, reached out to me again in her frenzy.
"Give me the inheritance. I deserve it all more than you do. I have 3 children, after all."
Brittany's eyes were bloodshot, her face demonic. Jimmy, encouraging Brittany in such a manner, an enraged Fred called the police.
"Go on, do it more."
Soon after their arrival, Fred and Mr. Smith explained the situation to the police. Jimmy and his spouse were then taken away by the police. Left behind, Fred and I thanked Mr. Smith and decided it was best for him to go home for the day. What was supposed to be just a discussion about creating a property settlement ended up being a terrible ordeal. Fred and I solemnly agreed to visit later with some sweets as an apology. Fred was very concerned about me being hit by Brittany, but when I told him that the headache had completely subsided, he seemed relieved. Amidst the tumultuous developments, I muttered to myself,
"That was quite an intense experience."
Then, Fred shared his thoughts with me.
"You know, Brittany always makes a big deal about her kids. She's always said how great she is for giving Mom 3 grandchildren. Don't you think she's too obsessed with money?"
Indeed, Brittany had always overly emphasized her children, and her greed for money earlier was intense.
"Well, yes. Even with the inheritance, Diana wanted to divide it equally, but Brittany wanting it all is a bit abnormal. The look on her face when she was hitting me was terrifying."
"Right?
"It's kind of abnormal."
Fred fell silent, lost in thought.
"What's wrong? Is something bothering you?"
I asked, unsure of what Fred was getting at.
"Yeah. There's something I've been thinking about. I want to suggest to my brother that we should do DNA testing for his 3 children."
I was taken aback by Fred's unexpected suggestion.
DNA testing?
"Yes. And I'm thinking of suggesting an investigation into Brittany's background too. Something just doesn't sit right with me. It's just a hunch."
Although I felt it might be unnecessary, I knew Fred's instincts had often been right in the past.
"All right. If you think so, let's propose it to Jimmy."
When Fred brought up the matter with Jimmy, Jimmy ridiculed and yelled at him fiercely.
"Just because you can't have kids, don't go doubting mine."
Though Jimmy shouted in protest, he snatched the DNA testing information from Fred as they parted, which might indicate some underlying concern on his part. The first results to come in were from the DNA testing of Jimmy and the children. It turned out that the 2 youngest were not biologically related to Jimmy.
"I had my suspicions about the youngest since they didn't really resemble either parent, but the middle child too."
Fred was speechless. Perhaps motivated by the results, Jimmy also conducted a thorough investigation into Brittany's background. It was revealed that Brittany had relationships with multiple men even before marrying Jimmy. Moreover, she had recently been discovered by the wives of her lovers, who then demanded compensation from her. Brittany, who spent more time at home than Jimmy, had been meticulously hiding this correspondence. The total amount of compensation demanded was far beyond what could be covered by Brittany's salary or savings. As a result, Brittany was desperately trying to secure Diana's entire estate for herself. Naturally, this led to a violent confrontation between Jimmy and Brittany, throwing objects at each other and engaging in a physical fight. Their confrontation escalated to the point where blood was shed, and a neighbor, unable to tolerate the noise any longer, called the police. The arriving officers ended up taking both parties away. Already under scrutiny for forging Diana's will, now they've committed an assault as well. When the police investigated the 2, it seems they uncovered numerous other offenses, including theft and harassing wealthy individuals. As a result, Jimmy and his spouse were sentenced to prison. Fred and I were deeply troubled about what to do with the 3 children left behind. With Diana gone, we were their closest relatives. We considered taking them in, but ultimately decided against it. The children had fully absorbed their parents' attitudes, openly disparaging us as incapable and childless. The eldest, Ricky, 14, was certainly old enough to understand right from wrong, and even the youngest, at 7, should have some sense of appropriate behavior. Yet, each time they saw us, all 3 sneered and hurled insults. Even with their parents' arrest and being at the heart of the turmoil, their attitudes remained unchanged.
We'd be doing you childless losers a favor by letting you raise us.
We never expected such words from a 14-year-old. Faced with such hostility, we felt neither love for the children nor the belief that we could raise them to be decent individuals. In the end, we contacted Brittany's parents and decided to cease all involvement with the children. It seemed the children themselves understood our firm stance, as Ricky remarked.
We'd rather stay in a rundown house than staying with a useless couple without kids.
We felt this was for the best, especially since they expressed such sentiments. It's worth noting that we never disclosed to the children the fact that the two younger ones were not biologically related to Jimmy. Whether to reveal the truth or not is something we've left to Jimmy, Brittany, and their relatives. Fred and I decided to use the estate Diana left us to make a fresh start by moving to a distant location. It was a place rich in nature with lots of greenery, and both Fred and I were able to fit in quickly. There's a charming waffle shop near our new home, and every time we pass by, I think of Diana and how I would have loved to take her there if she were still alive. Soon after we moved, I was blessed with the child I had long wished for. When I used the pregnancy test and saw the positive result appear, I couldn't help but shout in surprise and overwhelming joy. Later, when I went to the obstetrician-gynecologist and had it confirmed by the doctor, I was assured that I was indeed pregnant without a doubt. Fred and I embraced, both of us shedding tears of joy. I couldn't help but think how happy Diana would have been if she were still alive to witness this. Additionally, the business plan I had been quietly preparing is progressing well. Both Fred and I are working hard for our forthcoming child, leading fulfilling lives filled with happiness.
Thank you for always taking care of my husband.
I wrote this with a bright red permanent marker on the back of my husband who was passed out drunk. He wouldn't think that I knew about his daily affairs with younger women, under the guise of working late. But I knew everything. Suppressing the rage that made me want to claw at him, I left that message. It was a declaration of war to my husband's mistress. My husband, Darren, and I, Anita, both 38, got married 3 years ago. Both working, I mostly handle the housework since I work from home. We don't have kids, but I thought we were happily living together, a thought only I seem to have.
I'll be working late tomorrow too. Don't wait up for dinner, go to sleep first.
Darren, who started working late suddenly about 3 months ago. The frequency increased over time, and he started spending nights at the office twice a week.
You've been working late a lot recently. You never used to. The economy's better, and we're busier. That's good, right?
Yes, take care. I believed Darren's words and saw him off. But not only did Darren come home late, his attitude towards me grew colder. He used to invite me out on his days off, but now he barely spoke to me.
How about we go out today?
It's nice weather.
I'm tired, maybe some other time.
Then, let's watch a movie at home together.
Not in the mood. I want some alone time, go away.
Darren, barely lifting his face from his mobile phone, spoke with annoyance. On bad days, except for bathroom and meal times, he wouldn't leave his room all day.
Is this all just stress from work?
I was worried about Darren's changed behavior, but one day, my concern turned to suspicion. That day, Darren came home at 1 a.m., and I was still awake due to work.
Anita, you're still up?
I was working. Huh? The moment I took Darren's suit, I smelled an unfamiliar scent.
Why does your suit smell like perfume?
When I asked, Darren's face stiffened slightly as he sniffed his clothes. Then, he looked annoyed.
I don't smell anything. You have hay fever, so you wouldn't notice.
Yeah.
Maybe it's from a female coworker who wears too much perfume. Must have rubbed off. You notice the perfume despite your severe hay fever?
Well, yeah. She wears a lot. Darren's words sounded like a hasty, thoughtless excuse.
Were you that close to her to smell it so strongly? I helped her when she almost fell.
Darren licked his lips while saying this. A habit he had when lying.
Really? You're not hiding anything from me? Stop nagging. Don't snoop around like a controlling woman.
When I pressed him, Darren glared and stormed out of the living room.
Is he really cheating?
The next day, Darren left for work without breakfast and didn't return until after 9 p.m., ignoring all calls and messages from me. He only came back after midnight.
Welcome home.
I was worried. You didn't say you'd be working late today.
I was swamped with work. I tried to contact you several times. At least reply to my messages. I told you I was busy. I'm going to sleep.
Darren hastily retreated to the bedroom and slammed the door shut. Lately, even when going to bed, he turns his back to me, avoiding any contact.
I just want to have a calm conversation.
I approached the bedroom door and was about to knock. But then, I heard voices from inside and stopped. I just got home. I want to see you again, even though we just met.
I want to see you too. When can you come next?
Maybe I'll try to make it tomorrow too. I love you. Listening closely, I realized Darren was on a speakerphone call with a woman.
He barely talks to me.
Unable to hold back, I knocked and tried to listen through the door.
Who are you calling at this hour? Why hide it? What are you doing, Anita?
Angered, Darren swung the door open forcefully, knocking me down as I stood close by.
It hurts. What are you doing? Anita, how dare you eavesdrop on my call? What a nerve! I was just curious who you were talking to at this time. I was discussing work with a colleague. But it didn't sound like that. Shut up. Always saying presumptuous things. I'll show you.
Darren roughly picked me up and threw me outside the front door. Then he quickly shut the door and locked it.
What are you doing? Open the door. Annoying woman in the house is just a nuisance. Stay quiet out there. This is too much, no matter what. It's your fault. Reflect on it spending the night on the ground.
With those words, Darren's footsteps faded away into the house. Thrown out empty-handed, I couldn't even contact the apartment management. I had no choice but to spend the night at the entrance. The next morning, Darren came out before going to work and tossed the keys at me roughly.
Did you reflect? If you learned your lesson, don't ever meddle again.
After saying only what he wanted, Darren left for work without hearing my side.
To be treated this badly. I can't stay silent. I'll gather evidence.
A few days later, I decided to stake out his office as he claimed to be working late. Exiting the office at the regular time, Darren walked in the opposite direction of our home.
Where is he going?
Following him, he met up with a young, cute woman. I was shocked to see them walk arm in arm, boldly. I filmed them with my mobile phone as they entered a high-end French restaurant. When he dines with me, it's always at a family restaurant. The difference in treatment was both sad and frustrating. Suppressing my swirling emotions, I continued to watch. After their meal, they headed straight to a hotel.
Now I have perfect evidence.
I followed Darren several more times, gathering more evidence. It turned out, on days he said he was working late, he spent hours in a hotel, and nights he claimed to be staying over at work, he was at his mistress's house.
I'll be at the office all night working tomorrow.
Every day must be really tough. I bought some good wine today, how about we relax a bit? Since being thrown outside, I've been compliant, which seemed to please Darren, who happily agreed to a drink in the evening. Then he guzzled down the expensive wine and quickly got drunk.
Thank you for always taking care of my husband.
It's perfect. I wrote this message with bright red pen on Darren's back, partly as a declaration of war to his mistress. It seemed to have an effect because around 11 p.m. the next night, I received a call from Darren, who never initiates contact.
Did he realize? Is this about the mistress?
Wondering if it was Darren or his mistress, I nervously pressed the call button on my mobile phone.
I'm so sorry.
A woman's voice. I didn't recognize whose voice it was. So loud it crackled through the phone, making me pull it away from my ear.
What? I'm really sorry.
The mistress sounded panicked, not like she was making a hasty apology. I was surprised. This was not what I had expected.
You didn't know about him?
Yes. I wouldn't have been with him if I knew he was married.
That's unfortunate.
Her name is Lorna, a 28-year-old receptionist at Darren's client company.
Deceiving a woman like this is the worst. I'm in shock. He even proposed to me. What? We were planning our wedding, looking at venues. I was so excited until I found the message in the shower room.
She scrubbed off the message with a body brush as she would wash his back, pretending to feel sick, and went to bed early.
I panicked thinking I couldn't marry him. After he slept, I checked his phone and saw your messages, realizing you were his wife.
I didn't think you were unaware. I'm sorry for scaring you.
No, I should apologize for what I did, even unknowingly.
No need to apologize. You were promised marriage, you're a victim too.
Betrayed by Darren, and to think he deceived such a genuine girl. I've never felt so disgusted with someone. In my heart, I decided to end my relationship with Darren.
I'm going to divorce him. You should break up with him too. I want to, but I transferred about $10,000 to his account for our wedding expenses.
Really?
If our marriage was a lie, where's that money? Maybe he really planned to marry you? I don't want to marry such a terrible person. I want to get my money back and cut ties.
That's better. But let's make him truly reflect on his actions.
I couldn't let this go unchallenged. Thinking of a plan, I came up with an idea. Can you help me with something?
Anything.
Actually, I have a secret I haven't told Darren. She was obviously angry and shared a secret she kept from Darren. Thus, we joined forces to teach Darren a lesson. We secretly communicated and meticulously prepared. Over the next 2 weeks, the day of our retaliation arrived finally.
I'll be working late again today. Might even stay overnight.
You're always working hard. Take care not to overdo it. I smiled and saw Darren off, then contacted Lorna and went to her place to wait. Then, around 6 p.m., the doorbell of her house rang.
I'm home. Work was exhausting today.
Welcome back, Darren.
Huh?
When I appeared from the living room, Darren jumped as if he had seen a ghost.
Dinner? Bath? Or divorce?
Smiling, I thrust the divorce papers at him, making Darren drop his bag in panic.
Anita, why are you here?
Let's sit down and talk about it. Come, let's go to the living room.
What are you plotting? You didn't do anything to Lorna, did you? Just come quickly. Okay.
Seemingly shocked by my loud voice since I was a compliant recently, Darren hurried into the living room. There, Lorna sat on the sofa with a broad smile.
Lorna, what is this all about?
That's our line. How could you promise marriage to me when you have a wife?
Well,
Let's hear the full story, shall we? I sat next to Lorna and Darren sat in front of us. I began interrogating Darren. He finally seemed to give in.
Lorna was just a bit of fun. I was interested in younger girls.
Gross.
You're attractive too. But you know, eating the same thing every time gets boring, right? Sometimes you want to try something different.
I'm disgusted.
And why were you cold to me if that's the case?
That's because I thought if I was cold to you, you'd be more devoted.
I was too stunned by his reasoning to speak. Taking my place, Lorna glared at Darren.
If you weren't serious about me, why did you promise to marry me?
I thought marriage meant you'd give me money.
Give me back my money.
That's impossible. I've already spent it all.
Are you kidding? What did you spend it on?
I treated colleagues to slightly expensive lunches to be liked at work.
And what else? I bought expensive coats and shoes to impress clients. To think you spent my savings on such things. I'll never forgive you.
Lorna muttered in a low voice. I'll have you arrested for marriage fraud.
What? Isn't that an overreaction for something like this?
Additionally, I'm demanding $30,000 in compensation and $10,000 for the savings you spent.
Wait a minute. This is too harsh.
Darren's face turned pale with panic. Watching him, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity.
Anita, say something.
Just accept the arrest quietly.
I meant to Lorna. If your husband gets arrested, it'll be trouble, right?
Not at all. I'm getting divorced anyway.
Eh?
At the moment Darren heard the word divorce from me, his face turned even paler.
Divorce? You're joking, right?
Why would I stay married to a cheating fraudster like you?
You think you can live on your own after being a comfortable housewife all this time?
I'm not just a housewife, I work from home. I can live perfectly fine without you.
You mean you were actually working at home? I thought you were just pretending.
Darren looked at me with surprise. I'm also demanding $30,000 in alimony for your infidelity.
I can't pay anymore. What am I supposed to do if the amount increases?
You'll have to work hard, I guess. You'll probably be fired from your current job though.
Eh?
Lorna is actually the daughter of the vice president of your client company.
What? I thought she was just a receptionist.
That was the secret she hadn't told Darren. I kept it hidden because I thought it'd be difficult to date if you knew my position. I've already informed her father about everything. Of course, your company knows too. I had already reported to Darren's boss about his marriage fraud with the receptionist and that a police report was filed, and his arrest was imminent.
But I'm capable at work. Even if I get arrested, I'll have chances to keep working.
There's no way they'll keep you. As soon as the facts are confirmed, you'll be disciplined by the company. Almost certainly fired.
That's impossible.
Darren held his head, making a face as if to say I'm in despair. It was nauseating.
Lorna, let's get married after I divorce Anita. Then it won't be fraud, right?
I refuse.
Anita, let's start over. We can overcome this and become a real couple.
Your jokes should be only that silly face of yours. Lorna and I kicked out the pitifully clinging Darren from the house and celebrated with a high five. Later, Darren and I divorced, and I demanded the planned alimony. Darren was found guilty of marriage fraud from Lorna's report. She also claimed alimony and damages. After being fired and burdened with a huge debt, it's hard for a criminal to find employment. Even his parents disowned him, and he now lives and works at a quite terrible workplace. Lorna and I became friends. We occasionally enjoy drinks together and have fun.
Oh, you're the famous photographer. Are you here for a shoot today?
The woman in front of me stared at me excitedly. She, whom I met at the beach during clamming season, seemed to know I was a photographer. Despite being busy playing in the sand with her family of 3, she listened to my story with great interest. It's deeply moving to recall my early days as a photographer, when I struggled to gain credibility and couldn't get any assignments. When I told her I was here for a shoot, she eagerly volunteered to be my subject.
But could you please make sure not to show my child's face?
She said this, pointing to a cute little girl. The girl, about 2 or 3 years old, looked at us with wide, round eyes. Of course. What about you? As I asked, the father looked pale and darted his eyes around, repeating vague responses. It's understandable, I guess. After all, the father building a sandcastle with the girl is my husband. My name is Sophia. A 30-year-old freelance photographer. Most of my work involves school events and weddings in the area. I capture moments brimming with smiles and friendship, sharing them through my photos. It's not just about taking pictures, but about capturing people's memories and emotions, sharing happiness. Capturing these joyful moments of people is my job and my passion. But my life's shutter stopped in an instant due to an unforeseen event. My husband, Oliver, was a busy businessman. Involved in developing leisure facilities and tourist spots, he traveled all over the country. Though we rarely had time together, the moments we shared were special. Even the briefest times with him, his smiles were what kept me going. I never intended to quit my photography. We promised to support each other, build our careers, and got married. I took the opportunity to work style from traveling around the countries to work from home. Starting with posting landscape and permitted portraits on social media. As virtual galleries and online exhibitions expanded my reach, not just among publishers and peers but also among a general audience, my followers rapidly increased. On social media, where I could do live streams, I began to earn from talking shows and explanations about my photographs. It was fulfilling and enjoyable that I told the backgrounds or discussed techniques sharing my photos. Steadily growing my followers, I balanced outdoor shoots with social media promotions. Oliver was still constantly on business trips. I inevitably spent more time with my in-laws, James and Emma, who showed interest in my social media activities. Teaching them how to use smartphones and social media, we grew closer, and they often tuned into my photos and live streams. Both are wonderful people who ensure my fulfilling days. The company kept me from feeling lonely while my husband was away. However, there was a significant void in our lives. We couldn't have children. Despite numerous tests, it just wasn't happening. As we both wanted kids, we were upset because we just couldn't seem to have a baby for years. And it started affecting us. Oliver, who once supportive, grew tired of the financial strain and frequent hospital visits, and became increasingly discouraged about infertility treatment. At that time, his project enters the climax, so he stays away from home for days, traveling around the countries. It was clear that his focus shifted from our childlessness to his challenging work. His concern for my inability to conceive diminished, replaced by work talks. I felt lonely but tried to understand his busyness. Yet, no matter how understanding, we weren't emotionally close.
Yesterday, I had a meeting with a client, and it looks like a new project is starting. I'll probably be away for a while starting next week.
He said this, taking shirts and other laundry from his large suitcase. I had just gotten back home, but still, I hurried to start the washing machine for them. Oliver, when he runs out of clean clothes, rather than doing laundry or sending them for cleaning, he just buys new shirts. He says it's faster and foolproof, but I prefer to save where we can.
So, what about the hospital? That's impossible. I have to go too, right? I can't take off work, and next week is a no-go for me.
I sighed softly, making sure my husband couldn't hear. I had made a hospital appointment, but there's nothing I can do if he's out on a business trip. It would be inconvenient for his company, and I was happy that his hard work was being recognized. I didn't want to be a nuisance.
Well, but I'm busy too, and it's tough. You also out working on a shoot, right? Let's both keep up the hard work.
Yeah. Take care of yourself too, Oliver. I was dismissed so easily, yet I didn't speak my mind. Maybe he doesn't want kids anymore. But I'm too scared to ask if that's really the case. Should I just accept it quietly, or should I bring it up, even if it's roundabout? I'm torn. I'm good at capturing people's joy and sorrow through my camera. But now, I'm just going through the days, not even aware of my own feelings. I feel like I'm getting trapped inside the frames of my photos. Then, one day, a well-textured white envelope arrived at our house, with a logo of a famous resort company on it. It didn't seem like just another piece of direct mail, so I hurriedly opened it. Inside was a voucher for a stay at a luxury hotel by the sea. And it appeared to be for 3 people. Why was this sent to us? With a sense of foreboding, I quickly went to my husband. Oliver, this came in the mail. Do you know anything about it? Of course, I wasn't accusing him from the start. I made sure to ask in a way that didn't sound confrontational, just casual. He stopped reading his newspaper and looked at me. His expression was blank, but his eyes narrowed slightly, almost glaring. I'd never been looked at like that before, and I couldn't hide the chill in my heart. Oh, that. A colleague couldn't make it, so it was booked in my name.
It's nothing weird, so give it back. He reached for it. Without saying a word, I handed over the envelope and tickets. Oliver snatched them from me. But when he saw the name on it, he looked back at me, clearly annoyed this time. This is addressed to me, right? Don't open my mail without asking. I was taken aback and quickly apologized. But with my husband in sales, various DMs arrive. I've been disposing of the ones that come home without much thought, so I was surprised at his reaction. I'm sorry. I didn't know if it was direct mail, just wanted to check. I'm here today, you could have just asked me. He took the envelope to his room, and I couldn't ask any more about the tickets. I wasn't fully convinced why he had to book tickets for his colleague, but I had no choice but to accept his explanation. But then, not even half a month later, something else happened. It was May, approaching our wedding anniversary. We were supposed to gather at the in-laws' house, but he suddenly announced a long business trip. At first, I was speechless and confused. A business trip? On our wedding anniversary? In my job, I often get requests for family portraits or landscape photography. But I had plans, so I had taken the day off. Normally, a regular company, including Oliver's, would be off on Memorial Day. At least, his company should be closed as usual. He shrugged his shoulders lightly and forced a smile. It was a sudden decision, had to be done. I can't help but work through the holiday, so please go to the gathering for me. I know he's proud of his job and has been serious about his career since before we got married. But gradually, I find myself less convinced by his reasons for work and business trips in those casual moments. In the end, he just pulls along his favorite suitcase and leaves for work. Although they were angry at his attitude, because his call was so late that it was close to our wedding anniversary, they tried to make me comfortable. Sorry for making you free up your schedule in vain. I'll give Oliver a strict talking to next time I see him. Emma said that, but all I could do was give a wry smile. Originally, we were supposed to stay a few days after getting together. Oliver was the only child for them. I was told it would be sad if I left early, so I decided to stay a few days after our wedding anniversary as planned. I brought my camera and took pictures of them doing housework and everyday life, and scenes I usually don't focus on. I spent time thinking about shooting plans, but part of me felt the void of Oliver's absence. For work and a change of pace, I decided to visit the coast one station away. Around Memorial Day, the beach is busy with people clam digging and families enjoying their time. Some opened colorful beach umbrellas, enjoying walks and sunbathing. I walked along the beach with my camera around my neck. Suddenly, I stopped, noticing a family building a sandcastle. I paused at a familiar voice. I was glad I wasn't holding the camera in my hand. I thought that right in front of that scene, I wouldn't have been able to keep from dropping something. There was Oliver, with a young woman and a toddler, surrounding a sandcastle. They looked like a happy family, gathering white sand and shells. I couldn't believe my eyes. But then, the hotel tickets that arrived home, his frequent long business trips, his indifference. All came back to me. It would have been an ideal family scene for a photo shoot if it were a work assignment. But I couldn't believe my own husband was in it. The toddler, maybe 2 or 3 years old, seemed to match the time when I felt Oliver drifting away. He already had another family. Whether his real child or not, my intuition as a wife told me there was a blood connection. I felt like a glass frame in my heart was shattering. The photo inside that frame was supposed to be full of our happy smiles. I decided to speak up. Not to Oliver, but to the woman playing with the toddler. The woman, wearing a large straw hat, looked surprised as I suddenly spoke to her. I managed a smile and apologized for the abruptness. Then I pulled out my business card, explaining I'm a freelance photographer. My card only had my professional name, but also included my social media contact details. The woman looked interestedly at the card, then started searching for me on her mobile phone. Meanwhile, Oliver, fully aware of me, stared frozen at a point on the sand. Would you mind if I take a photo of your family?
I sometimes do live streams showing photography tips.
What? Sophia, I know you. I follow you. You post tips for mobile photography, right?
She was excited, unaware of my situation, happy to be approached by a minor celebrity on social media. I was surprised she was a follower, but her enthusiasm seemed to extend to agreeing to a live stream as well. When I boldly invited her, she was all in before I could finish.
Of course!
Exclaimed, overjoyed. I felt guilty for deceiving, but my goal was to somehow document the other family Oliver had.
Can you teach me some photography tricks for mothers? Oliver, you're okay with that, right?
Oliver, caught off guard, was in a panic. I could tell he was desperately trying to avoid looking at me and thinking of an excuse. Maybe we shouldn't, show faces.
I do model for brochures, Oh, could you make sure not to include the child?
Later I learned that the other woman, Amelia, was a model he met through his company's PR work. Of course, I agreed, carefully adjusting the mobile phone camera to keep the child out of the frame. I set up for immediate streaming and started a live broadcast under the guise of teaching Mother Amelia. With the child out of the picture, Oliver, who was attending to her, became the center of the screen. His strange smile was interpreted positively by viewers, quickly spreading as him being cute but nervous. After the live stream, I thanked them and left. But it wasn't long before Oliver chased after me and stopped me. He had left Amelia and the child behind. I just asked him,
"What are you thinking?"
But he just stood there, sullenly silent. Probably, being with Amelia was awkward, so he ran to me. What did he intend by stopping me? Finally, he spoke.
Sophia, please understand.
How can I understand without a proper explanation? Well, I can guess after seeing.
But I had no choice. I had a child with her before we had one. It's fine. Amelia's family is wealthy, and she said she doesn't need to marry me.
Oliver finally confessed the truth, defiantly. I couldn't believe a young woman who got pregnant would say something so convenient. Probably, she knew he was married.
I wanted a child. But you couldn't have one. She is nice and honest, and the child is adorable, looks just like her. But that doesn't mean I've come to dislike you or hate living with you.
His words were incoherent, leaving me at a loss. He seemed to argue for maintaining the status quo.
I won't trouble you. This situation is perfect for me. Isn't this good enough?
As if that's an excuse. I should have argued back. But I was so overwhelmed with pain, I lost my voice. My husband, seeing me silent, sighed as if he had convinced me, and was about to leave. But then, unexpectedly, two people arrived. It was James and Emma.
Oliver! Who is that woman and child?
James, red-faced, shouted. Oliver was shocked by the sudden appearance of his parents.
What? Why? I saw it on the live stream notification. Who is this long business trip with? Skipping home visits, with an unknown woman, and even a child.
Before James could stop her, Emma stepped between Oliver and me, protecting me, sharply addressing Oliver. I was also shocked. They had seen the live stream on social media and realized something terrible was happening. Shocked by the sight of Oliver appearing as a couple with an unknown woman, they rushed over. Confronted by his parents, he ended up confessing everything about his relationship with Amelia and their child.
Such a disgrace to the family.
He was struck by a strong slap from Emma, who was rendered speechless. James glared at him with an expression so terrifying that I thought he would have punched him if not for the slap. They left Oliver behind and took me to their car. Following their apologies and strong recommendation, I decided to divorce. After exposing Oliver and his affair with Amelia and securing compensation from them, things settled down for a while. However, as the divorce proceedings and investigations went on, various truths came to light. Firstly, Amelia truly knew Oliver was married. Given her willingness to have a child without marriage, it seemed she had prepared herself to some extent for a relationship with a married man. She had tried to keep the issue under wraps not just for money, but probably to keep Oliver around as long as possible. Upon realizing this, she became outraged and blocked all my social media accounts. Not only that, she started posting recklessly on various platforms, inadvertently revealing herself as the other woman, which only garnered sympathy for me. Her relationship with a married man caused trouble in her family home. Being driven out and nearly losing her home, she brazenly tried to live in my former in-laws' house. Naturally, they firmly refused to let her set foot on their property. Next, Oliver's secrets began to unravel. During the compensation claim investigation, numerous women and men connected to him came forward. It turned out he had repeated affairs during his business trips, with several partners over multiple occasions. Some of these affairs involved women who were engaged or married. I decided to send the data from the infamous live stream. A little investigation would reveal that I, the legitimate wife, was the streamer, and the people on camera were Oliver's mistress and their child. As a result, women who were deceived into thinking he was single and husbands whose wives were taken from them became angry and sued Oliver. He faced lawsuits from many people, including me, with no choice but to accept them all. As the truth about my husband continued to emerge, Amelia fled with her child. Probably fed up, she chose to escape from her relationship with him. The turmoil she caused on social media calmed down, and her accounts disappeared, so I decided to let her be. However, considering her nature of boasting about affairs on social media, it was unlikely she would just disappear. Sure enough, Amelia started posting under a completely different account. But her posts, portraying herself as a tragic heroine, were quickly identified and sparked outrage. Subsequently, she would delete her account when things got bad and create new ones, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Abandoned even by Amelia, Oliver apparently turned to his parents in the end, but their learning about his multiple affairs infuriated them further. Without any apology and only asking for help because he was in trouble, the parents-in-law decided to sever ties with their son. After the infidelity scandal, Oliver was burdened with a significant amount of compensation. As legal proceedings progressed, inquiries from mistresses and their husbands poured into his company, complicating the situation further. Worse still, this wasn't the worst outcome. His face being exposed on social media and the revelation of a child from an affair was an unprecedented scandal, especially since it happened during a business trip. The information spread quickly, and comments of shock and anger flooded related facilities and reviews associated with his company. The drop in trust due to the scandal spread both internally and externally, prompting the management to feel a sense of crisis and rush to devise strategies. However, not being familiar with crisis management, they were forced to hastily consult experts and develop communication strategies. Meanwhile, they instructed employees to provide accurate information, desperately trying to quell the confusion. The scandal led to numerous inquiries and criticisms from both inside and outside the company, rapidly tarnishing Oliver's reputation. He became an outcast at work, completely isolated within the company. In an uncomfortable atmosphere, the company soon wished for his resignation, and Oliver had to look for a new job. He was competent and had good sales performance. Preferred by older generations who don't use social media, he quickly found a new job. But human nature doesn't change. In less than 6 months, he was rumored to have made advances on the manager's wife and tried to expense motel charges from a business trip. He was fired and, even after joining new companies, kept causing troubles in his relationships and getting dismissed. After repeating this cycle, he is now hopping from one industry to another, being driven out from everywhere. Meanwhile, I maintained a relationship with my parents-in-law even after the divorce. Thanks to their care, I have been living peaceful days. It's because of their support that I was able to start anew after my relationship with Oliver ended. For a while after the divorce, I found it painful to take photos of children. Even though they got hurt betrayed by their son, they made an effort to show their good relationship and supported me. They helped me realize that my relationship with Oliver wasn't everything about marriage. They cared to give me the strength to believe again. One day, I captured a photo of my parents-in-law talking peacefully. I plan to feature this photo in my next online photo exhibition. They were quite embarrassed, but I think they'll be happy in the end.
A wife who neglects her housework is not needed in this house, right? Such a useless woman does not deserve to be my son's wife.
Leave this house!
Chloe, my mother-in-law, said this to me, and with a smile, I replied,
Understood.
I left the house and went back to my parents' home. Probably Chloe will storm into my parents' home. I don't know what will happen to me from now on. I am Sophia, a 25-year-old housewife. I married Timothy last year and have been living a smooth life. Except for one thing, Chloe's presence makes our newlywed life less peaceful. Chloe is a son-obsessed, clingy mother. Especially since Timothy is an only child. We live at a medium distance and meet only a few times a year. Whenever I see Chloe, she annoyingly checks whether I am taking good care of Timothy. Last time we met, "You're taking care of Timothy properly, right? Listen, Timothy loves meat and hates fish. You remember that, right? I remember you said during our first meeting that your favorite dish to cook is fish stew. If you're serving Timothy the same thing, I won't let it slide," she said. Chloe seems desperate to make sure I am doing my household duties and making meals that Timothy enjoys. Timothy loves the fish stew I make, and we have never had any trouble with meals. I can let it go, but she looked at my clothes, saying, "You're dressed so inappropriately. When standing beside Timothy, you should dress to match him. A short skirt? How vulgar. Are you trying to tempt other men?" I was utterly baffled. My skirt was knee-length and quite modest. Timothy has a simple style, and my outfit that day matched his. It seemed Chloe didn't want me to outshine Timothy. When you two are together, everyone's eyes go to Sophia. It's because of the bright colors of your clothes. From now on, wear a white shirt and black pants. Don't wear anything else. Chloe, beaming as if she had a great idea, got a wry smile from me. Thankfully, Timothy stood up for me. "What are you talking about, Mom? I think Sophia is cute no matter what she wears, and she should wear what she likes. Stop hassling her with your weird demands." Saying. Chloe often comes up with these nonsensical requests. On the other hand, my father-in-law is harmless but doesn't contribute positively either. He always seems preoccupied, either reading the newspaper or watching news on TV, never joining in our conversations. He turned a blind eye to whatever Chloe said to me, right in front of him. I've tried to talk to him several times since getting married. But because he shows no interest in chatting, the conversation dies down quickly. Honestly, visiting my in-laws has always been a burdensome event for me. Then one day, I started feeling unwell and couldn't manage the household chores. I thought my headache and slight fever would pass, but Timothy was worried and decided we should visit a doctor the next day. It was a Saturday, and Timothy had the day off. Our usual clinic was only open in the morning on Saturdays. The doctor asked if I could be pregnant, and I remembered my period was late. "Maybe I am pregnant," I said, and took a pregnancy test right there. The result was positive. We immediately visited a nearby gynecologist, and it was confirmed I was pregnant. Timothy and I were overjoyed. Especially Timothy, with tears streaming down his face. "Sophia, thank you." He kept thanking me over and over again. But when we reported the pregnancy to our parents, Chloe showed up at our house carrying a huge bag. I was suffering from severe morning sickness and was holed up in the bathroom, unable to come out. As the doorbell was repeatedly rung, I hurried out of the bathroom to answer it, and there was Chloe. "Chloe? You were trying to pretend you weren't home, weren't you?" "No, I was just in the bathroom." "I don't care, just let me in." I staggered to the door and opened it. Chloe was holding a large Boston bag, and I had a bad feeling. "We're going to live together until the baby grows up." I was stunned by Chloe's sudden words. I couldn't just leave her at the entrance, so I let her into the house. "I'll make some coffee," I said, and headed to the kitchen and called Timothy while waiting for the water to boil. It was a weekday afternoon, and Timothy was at work as usual. I was worried if he would answer, but he did after a few rings. "Sophia? Is something wrong?"
Hey, Chloe came over. She's carrying a big bag. Do you know anything?
Eh? I haven't heard anything. But she said she would come by soon. I never thought she'd come when I'm not home.
I see. I'll ask Chloe for the details.
Sorry. If Mom says something weird, you can kick her out. Oh, sorry, I have to hang up. Timothy seemed busy and hung up.
As if I can just kick her out because she says something weird. He really doesn't get it.
I sighed a little. Timothy is generally kind and cherishes me, but he doesn't think through the consequences of prioritizing my wishes. I can imagine the uproar Chloe would make if I tried to kick her out. For now, I just prepared the coffee and served it to Chloe. "Chloe, what brings you here today?" "Timothy is at work. He'll be home around 6 p.m.
This doesn't look good.
What? Confused by Chloe's sudden remark, I watched as she took a sip of the coffee I had prepared. Young people are hopeless. They can't even make a decent cup of coffee. Poor Timothy, having to drink this. I'll teach you how to make coffee right now. Come here. I'm sorry, my morning sickness is quite bad. Could we do this some other time when I'm feeling better? It's just morning sickness. It's fine, you'll feel better if you eat something. Come on, hurry up. Then, for an hour, Chloe's coffee-making lesson began. As I started feeling nauseous, Chloe opened the cupboard on her own, took out a plate, and placed a piece of bread. Eat this. You'll feel better if you eat. The smell of the bread made me feel even sicker, and I ran to the bathroom. With a headache and nausea, my mind was a blur. For the 3 hours until Timothy came home, I was holed up in the bathroom. Chloe kept knocking on the door in front of the bathroom, but I didn't have the energy to respond. Around 6 p.m., Timothy came home. First, Timothy was surprised to see Chloe making a fuss in front of the bathroom. I had fallen asleep in the bathroom, and when I woke up, Chloe and Timothy were arguing outside. "Why did you suddenly come?" "Sophia is suffering from morning sickness, don't be a nuisance. I came to supervise whether this girl is properly doing her housework as a housewife. I bet she's just using her morning sickness as an excuse to be lazy. I was shocked that she can't even make coffee properly. The coffee Sophia makes is delicious. And what's this supervision about? Sophia isn't someone who would use morning sickness as an excuse to slack off on housework. If she couldn't do it, maybe her morning sickness is really bad? Sophia, you were holed up in the bathroom for 3 hours. Timothy is so naive, he's easily deceived. I really need to be here to guide Sophia. I got married to make those around me happy. Even if Sophia were slacking off, I wouldn't mind. As long as she's doing what she wants and staying by my side, I don't want anything more. No need for guidance. Please go home." I smiled at Timothy's words. The symptoms of my morning sickness had subsided, so I opened the bathroom door. "Welcome home, Timothy. Chloe, sorry for leaving you alone." "You! How can you lock yourself in the bathroom when you have a guest? What kind of nerve do you have?" "Well, I couldn't show Chloe my messy state, so I locked myself in the bathroom. I'm truly sorry about that. Anyway, I've made dinner, so make sure you eat all of it." With that, Chloe said, and Timothy pointed to the entrance. "No, Mom, please go home." "No way. I've already told Dad that I'm staying here. I don't trust young people." See, she didn't even prepare dinner because she was holed up in the bathroom with morning sickness. I'm definitely not going back. Chloe stubbornly refused to move. Forcing her out would not satisfy Chloe, so I decided to allow her to stay. "Then, maybe you can stay for a while." But I knew Timothy was worried about me, but kicking her out now would only create more trouble later. I smiled at Timothy to reassure him.
"It's okay."
After that, Chloe tried to force me to eat chicken. Lately, I've been mainly eating vegetables and fruits. With severe morning sickness, even the sight of fried food, let alone bread, made me feel sick. Chloe complained about this too, but Timothy was completely on my side, which was a great help. The next day, worried about leaving me alone with Chloe.
Call me if anything happens. It's okay to lock yourself in the bathroom,
Timothy said to me before going to work. As expected, Chloe complained about everything I did. If I cleaned, she complained I was too slow. If I did laundry, she said I should care more for Timothy's clothes than mine. Each time. All right. I just responded. When morning sickness hit and I rushed to the bathroom, Chloe would knock on the door. When I came out,
Keep bathroom visits under 5 minutes,
she said. Chloe did nothing but complain, while I struggled with housework in the midst of severe morning sickness. I knew this would happen when I allowed Chloe to stay, but honestly, I wanted her to go back to the in-laws' house soon. I did as much as Chloe said as I could without overexerting myself. Timothy, except for one day when he was late due to a company drinking party, came home early without overtime, and there didn't seem to be any major problems. After about 5 days of living like this, Chloe finally said something to me. That day, my morning sickness was particularly bad, and in the middle of cleaning, I left the vacuum cleaner and rushed to the bathroom, unable to come out for many minutes. Then Chloe stood in front of the bathroom and began to yell.
Hey you! Weren't you in the middle of cleaning? Are you expecting me to do it? Enough is enough! Claiming to have severe morning sickness, are you just slacking off? Thinking you can just hide in the bathroom?
I didn't have the energy to respond to Chloe, but she kept complaining endlessly. The symptoms of my morning sickness had subsided, but I didn't feel like facing the continually fussing Chloe, so I just sat on the toilet seat waiting for Chloe to calm down. As I was sighing, wondering whether to call Timothy. A wife who neglects her housework is not needed in this house, right? Such a useless woman does not deserve to be my son's wife. Leave this house, Chloe suddenly said. I immediately came out of the bathroom and understood. I replied with a broad smile and went straight to my room. Chloe followed me, looking puzzled, but I locked the door to my room, making sure she couldn't enter. Then, I packed a travel bag with some clothes and valuables that I had stored in my closet. Knowing Chloe would try to stop me if I left now, I waited until she left the front of my room. Chloe kept knocking on my room's door, but after waiting for about 2 hours, she finally left. I heard a door close in the distance, probably her going to the bathroom. I grabbed my bag and immediately left the house, getting a taxi to my parents' home. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mom, who was a housewife and at home, was very surprised. My dad wasn't at work, so I explained the situation to my mom first.
I understand that Chloe loves her son and doesn't think highly of me. But still, it's annoying to be complained at up close.
My mom didn't get particularly angry, but just gave a wry smile. Well, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict is common everywhere. It might be good for you to stay home for a while. Chloe seems like she can look after Timothy. You think so? Aren't you going to get mad about what she's doing to your daughter? Well, Sophia, you must be up to something, right? My mom seemed to see right through everything. Then, I contacted Timothy and told him I would stay at my parents' house until Chloe went back home. Timothy also felt it was safer that way, and I relaxed at my parents' house for the first time in a long time. The next day, as expected, Chloe came to my parents' house. When I opened the door and showed my face, Chloe turned red and started making a fuss. Why are you back at your parents' house? Hurry back and make Timothy's dinner. It's a failure as a wife to go to such lengths to avoid housework. But I replied with a smile. Eh? I just did what you told me to, right? You said to leave, didn't you? Are you saying I should have slept outside instead of going back to my parents' house? What's with this girl? So irritating. I didn't really mean for you to leave. I'm just saying you should do your housework properly. I was doing my housework as you told me to. I don't understand why I have to do it quickly, but the quality of my housework doesn't change just because I went to the bathroom in the middle. Then Chloe's eyes narrowed in anger.
Don't talk nonsense. When I was pregnant, I didn't go to the bathroom so much. Eating makes the nausea go away. Despite that, you don't listen.
Then, from behind me, Mom came. With a troubled look, Mom gently spoke to Chloe.
Chloe, you had a different symptom, didn't you? My daughter has different symptoms. She's a different person, so it's natural for her morning sickness symptoms to be different. Please don't assume she's the same just because you experienced it.
What are you saying? Children should listen to their parents.
At that, Chloe seemed taken aback for a moment, and I smiled.
Huh.
I see.
So Chloe, you just wanted to manipulate me to do as you wish? No one will act exactly as you want them to. That includes Stephen as well.
Confused by my words, Chloe tilted her head.
Stephen? Your husband. You're so busy meddling in your son's household that you've completely forgotten about your own. Perhaps it's time you returned to your own home?
Then Chloe started making a phone call. Probably to her husband's number. But the call didn't connect, it seemed like she was blocked, and in a panic, Chloe rushed back home. Later, I heard from Timothy that when Chloe returned to the in-laws' house, there was only a divorce application stamped by her husband and a note with a single line on the table. The note apparently said that he would take all the retirement pay as the distribution of property, and everything else would be left to her. Chloe tried contacting her husband at his workplace, but he had already retired, and his whereabouts became unknown. But in reality, he hasn't retired from his job yet. He was staying for a month for handover and had asked the company to tell Chloe that he had retired if she called. Actually, Timothy and I knew where he was. He was staying in a business hotel and planning to live with a relative in a distant region after retirement. We were supposed to inform him when Chloe filed for divorce, and he said he wanted to start a new life then. About a week ago, when Chloe came to my house and it got late, I called him.
Chloe is at our house. Are you okay, Stephen? Aren't you lonely by yourself?
When I asked him kindly, Raphael, who usually hardly spoke, opened up about his true feelings. Maybe because it was over the phone and not face-to-face, he could speak without stress.
Sophia, you're the only one who worries about someone like me. My wife has always treated me like an ATM, never as a husband. When Timothy was young, if I tried to play with him, she'd say, "Don't touch him, you're dirty, stay away." Maybe that's why Timothy became unsure how to interact with me. I've always been timid and lived a rather dull life under my wife's thumb. You're right, I've always been lonely.
At that moment, I thought I could use Raphael to drive Chloe away. There would still be interactions with Chloe in the future. If I forced her out now, I could be endlessly complained at. In the worst case, if Chloe persuaded Raphael to leave their house and said they had nowhere to go, they might both end up at our house, making it difficult for us to refuse. I discussed it with Timothy, and he had been aware since he was young that his parents were a sham couple and wanted to do something about it. I had Timothy pretend to be working overtime and visit the in-laws' house to have a heart-to-heart talk with Raphael. Raphael then confessed to Timothy that he wanted a divorce from Chloe. So, we decided to have Raphael proceed with the preparations for the divorce. I had been waiting for the right moment when Chloe would seriously listen to me. I thought she might calm down a bit in a place away from her own territory, like my parents' house, and thankfully, it worked better than expected. Faced with her own issues, Chloe quickly returned to the in-laws' house, so I decided to go back to my house too. Timothy and I then persuaded Chloe. We carefully explained to her how she had been making Raphael suffer, that Raphael wanted to be free, and that if she continued to be difficult, Raphael was prepared to take the matter to court. We warned her that if it came to a court case, both Timothy and I would side with Raphael. Finally, Chloe stamped the divorce papers and submitted them to the office. After that, Chloe ended up living alone in the in-laws' house. She seemed lonely and wanted to live in our house, but Timothy firmly refused.
If you come here, Sophia will go back to her parents' house. If that happens, I'll never consider you as my mother again. Just like you ignored Dad, I'll ignore you as if you didn't exist.
With Timothy's firm statement, Chloe, dejected, went back to the in-laws' house. I feel fortunate to have such a reliable husband. As for Raphael, as soon as Timothy informed him about the finalized divorce, he immediately moved out of the relative's house and into a small apartment. He got a job in the same field as before his retirement. Though his income dropped a bit, he's more relaxed than when he lived with Chloe and now happily immerses himself in his hobbies every day. Later, I safely gave birth to a baby. A healthy girl. When I'm in trouble, my mom helps as much as possible, and Chloe is only allowed to meet my daughter when I permit it. Thanks to this, I'm managing to raise my child without stress. I believe that, though there will be challenges ahead, as long as I'm with Timothy, who cares deeply for me, we can overcome anything.
I gave your dead ex-husband's life insurance money to my eldest son's wife for her housewarming. What's yours is mine, so you shouldn't have any complaints.
Divorce? Understood. I guess he thought I would cry and refuse the divorce, because my husband seemed a bit surprised. Don't think everything will go your way. Just you watch. My name is Jennifer. I am actually remarried to my current husband, David. I was widowed from my previous husband, William, due to illness. William had a disease since his youth, which worsened and led to his death. Concerned about me being left alone, William left me a substantial amount of life insurance. I had no children with William. I met David through a relative's introduction. When I tried to refuse him, saying I wasn't a first-time bride.
Don't worry about that,
he said. I felt happy, as it seemed he accepted not just me but also William. Since remarrying David, due to my frail health and David's high income, I've been a housewife. I gave birth to our daughter Susan and our son Anthony, and I've tried my best with housework and child-rearing. David sometimes brought home stress from work, behaving selfishly and yelling suddenly, but I managed to get by. When David was in a bad mood, moocher, nuisance, he would call me things like that. But I am grateful to David for providing a financially comfortable life. David treated our son Anthony specially as the heir to the house. For Susan and Anthony's birthday and Christmas gifts, school entrance gifts, and other occasions, he clearly favored one over the other. During long vacations in summer, he would take Anthony to his parents' house and not return him for days. At David's parents' house, Anthony could eat sweets and play games all he wanted, messing up his daily rhythm and study habits. When he returned, he would rebel and look down on me, making it very difficult to return to our normal life. I appealed many times to stop this, as it wasn't good for Anthony, but
I took in a woman with a marriage history. A wife shouldn't talk back,
he said, and never accepted it. Susan disliked David and his family's home and left the house early. Susan got married about 5 years ago. She has children and is struggling with childcare. Anthony got married about 2 years ago. His wife was young and beautiful. I often had trouble with Anthony's wife, Nancy's attitude, but we didn't meet often, and I thought maybe that's just how young people are these days, so I didn't interfere much. Now, this happened about 2 years ago. When Anthony and Nancy had dinner at our house to celebrate their marriage, Nancy said as soon as she arrived,
"Wow, what a lovely house. Anthony grew up here? I'm so jealous. David, you're so successful, how impressive." "Well, you know, my wife is useless and can't work, so I had to work hard alone. But I guess this house is getting a bit old, just like my wife. How unpleasant, houses and women shouldn't be old. Women should be young and cute like you, Nancy. Nancy, you work, right? That's commendable. In this day and age, capable women need to work and live in society. Unlike my useless wife."
David was smitten with the attractive Nancy and insulted me unnecessarily. This house is old, but I keep it well organized and clean. Perhaps because of David's groundless accusations, Nancy seems to think it's okay to look down on me just because I'm older. She even directed her condescending gaze at my eldest daughter, Susan.
"Susan is just like Jennifer, huh? I think you should take care of your nails and wear some accessories. Have you given up just because you have kids? I won't become like Susan after marriage, Anthony, don't worry.
Of course, you're different from Mom and Susan. They're so different, it's like they're not even the same species. Nancy acts superior and out of line towards Susan, who is struggling with childcare every day, but neither David nor Anthony seem to notice how ridiculous it is. After the dinner, when Anthony and Nancy left, Susan said in a dismayed voice, "Her attitude is questionable, isn't it? Honestly, I don't want to be involved." Regarding this, David said, "Susan, are you angry because she hit the nail on the head?" "Ah, women's jealousy is ugly," he said dismissively. Susan, looking truly disgusted, said, "Dad, you need to look at things more calmly or you might lose your way.
A woman shouldn't speak so arrogantly. You always say such presumptuous things, Susan. Just go home."
David, upset, locked himself in his room. "Mom, if you have any troubles or concerns, please consult me right away. I'm kinda worried about you." Susan left after saying that. One day, Susan invited me to a cafe in the neighborhood. Ever since that incident, Susan has been inviting me out more often, maybe to check if I'm all right.
Mom, now that you're free from child rearing, why don't you find a hobby or something enjoyable? Remember how you used to love gardening? Do you still do that?
I still do a bit of gardening at home. Maybe I should take this time to relearn about different types of flowers and their planting methods.
These days, many people post their gardening pictures on social media, which is fun to look at and can be inspiring. Let me see your phone, I'll install the app for you.
After saying that, she installed a social media app on my phone. Indeed, there were many beautiful gardening images, and I found them educational. I was impressed that young people nowadays use such convenient and enjoyable things. From that day, I started browsing various posts whenever I had time. Not just gardening, but I also began searching for information on local botanical gardens and nice cafes. One day, I came across a post that caught my eye. It was about a new Italian restaurant in our neighborhood, which I had wanted to visit. But David had said,
"Don't waste my hard-earned money on frivolous things."
So, I wasn't allowed to go out to eat. The post showed a man and a woman dining together, perhaps on a date. They weren't showing their faces, just their hands, a high-end brand purse, and the keys of a luxury car. However, the purse and the style of the nails on the woman's hand seemed similar to Nancy's. And the man's hand didn't seem like Anthony's. It bothered me a little, but it was just a post on social media with no solid proof, so I was confused and didn't know what to do. When I consulted Susan about this, "Got it, I'll look into it a bit," she said. Recently, Anthony and his wife announced they were building a new house. It seems to be a stylish house, heavily influenced by Nancy's preferences.
Nancy keeps adding options, and the initial estimate is now a joke. She insists on a top-tier housemaker. But I can't say no when Nancy asks.
Anthony was in a good mood.
"Well, I wanted our house to be nicer than this one." "That's okay, right?" Anthony has no choice but to listen when a cute wife like Nancy asks for something. I wish Nancy would ask me for something. "Oh, really? I wonder what I should ask for."
My presence being ignored, the three of them were excitedly having fun together. Thinking that a loan beyond one's means would only lead to future hardships, I considered sending some cash as a housewarming gift from us, and looked at the drawer with my debit card inside. To my surprise, the debit card containing the $300,000 insurance money left to me by my late husband William was missing. I immediately confronted David about it.
"The debit card with the $300,000 insurance money from my late husband William is missing. What did you do with it? Where did you put it?"
Then David said,
That money is for Nancy's housewarming. Since it's thanks to me that you have been able to live up till now, that money is mine, right? If you have a problem with that, we can just get a divorce, okay?"
Saying this, David flaunted the divorce papers in front of me.
That money was precious, left to me by William. Of course, I never intended to use it alone. It was meant to eventually rebuild this old house into a small single-story home where I could spend my twilight years with David. Anthony and Nancy looked at me with malicious grins.
That's right, Jennifer. Wait, you remarried? Then you should be more grateful to David. Did William die of an illness? How sad. But money is useless to someone who's dead. We'll make sure to use it properly in his place.
I took you in, Jennifer, even when you had a marriage history. I would appreciate a bit of gratitude. Besides, William died a long time ago. He's none of our concern. Wouldn't William be happier if lovely Nancy used the money more effectively than you, Jennifer? Facing David's nasty grin, I felt my affection for him cooling. Even though David was arrogant and looked down on me, I endured it because I thought he had accepted me and my late husband William, since it wasn't my first marriage. David, didn't you tell me not to worry about not being in my first marriage when we got married? Were those words a lie? Huh? That was just because I thought someone who felt inferior would be easier to manipulate. And it turned out to be true. Mom seemed to be tough on you because of that, but I couldn't care less. I was foolish. I had completely misunderstood. As a last hope, I turned to Anthony. Anthony, I raised you with love in my own way. Do you understand my sadness? What do you think, Anthony? I don't understand your feelings. As long as I have Nancy and money, that's all I need. So, you're giving me the money, right? As a parent, you should do anything for my happiness, right? Fulfill your responsibility. This was truly a shock. Regarding Anthony, I realized it was my responsibility for raising him this way. A feeling of guilt overwhelmed me. However, now that things have come to this, I resolved to focus on protecting myself. Understood. Then, let's get a divorce. Thank you for everything. I said emotionlessly, with a voice surprisingly low, even to myself. David, expecting me to cry and cling to him, looked a bit surprised at first. But then his expression changed to one of pity as he said, "You sure about this? Think hard, okay?" He said, and tossed the divorce papers at me. Anthony and Nancy were distorting their mouths in laughter. They all seemed like aliens to me. How much do they need to belittle others to be satisfied? As I quickly packed my things, I contemplated the future. Once I left the house, I immediately submitted the completed divorce papers to the courthouse. Now we would soon be officially divorced. I rented an apartment a little away from Susan's family's house and started living alone. I didn't persistently pursue David because I had a plan. One day, Anthony called, informing me that David had been arrested for theft. It was natural for suspicion to arise when someone, now a stranger, tried to withdraw $300,000 from a bank account under my name. At the police station, David claimed, "I supported Jennifer for years, so her things are mine. What's wrong with me withdrawing this money?" But such a claim wouldn't hold up. Despite his personality, I thought he was a calm and capable person, but his way of thinking had become so twisted. I felt embarrassed to have spent all these years married to such a man. Anthony seemed to think that if I spoke well of David to the police, his punishment could be lessened. Why would he think I would help lessen David's sentence? I'm divorced now, it's none of my concern. Don't contact me. I hung up the phone. Later investigations revealed that David had been embezzling company funds, leading to his dismissal. This was surprising. Was there a reason he needed money so desperately to commit such a crime? It felt like there were still facts I didn't know. Around the same time as David's arrest, Susan contacted me. She had been investigating the social media account I was curious about. The posts I had previously seen were carefully made without showing faces, but some revealed reflections in mirrors or easily identifiable locations. It was indeed Nancy. Selling personal information for likes, I was appalled by her lack of crisis management skills. Her need for validation was indeed ingrained. Among the posts were some that slandered or defamed others. There were also posts suggesting personal relationships with several people, hinting at infidelity. Susan presented this evidence to Anthony. Anthony, furious, confronted Nancy, but she brazenly responded, "If you have a problem, we can just get divorced, okay?" Showing defiance. Perhaps due to his infatuation, Anthony couldn't bring himself to divorce her. However, it was problematic since some of the men involved had families or held significant positions at work. Moreover, Nancy received a stern warning from her workplace regarding her defamatory posts on social media, making it difficult for her to stay at the company, leading to her resignation. Such actions were typical of Nancy, known for her excessive pride. Well, all of this no longer concerns me. Several months later, I received a call from David. I didn't want to answer, but after several calls, I decided to pick up. "How many times do you think I've called you?" "Well, never mind. The house is filthy now. No one does any housework. It's like a garbage dump. Jennifer, come and clean it up."
Huh? Who are you?
"What?"
It's you, David. Your voice has become so old I couldn't recognize you. Now, what were you saying?
"I said come and clean the house. Can't you understand?"
Why should I, now a stranger, clean your house?
"What's with that arrogant tone? You and I were married, so you're also responsible for the house I'm living in."
I have no responsibility. How about doing it yourself? Housework is a simple task, isn't it? I blurted it out, recalling something I had been told in the past.
"A man doing housework? I've told you so many times that housework is a woman's job. You're so stupid."
Then how about asking your beloved Nancy? Isn't she currently unemployed, a moocher and a nuisance as you once said? I found myself repeating things I had been told in the past.
I can't possibly ask Nancy to do such things."
I knew that Nancy wasn't capable of housework, but it seemed David was also afraid of being disliked by Nancy, so he couldn't bring himself to ask her for help.
"Look, David.
You and I are divorced, so we're no longer husband and wife. I have no obligation or responsibility to clean your house. Understand? If you contact me again, I'll consult a lawyer."
After hearing this, David hastily hung up the phone. Several days later, I received another call from David.
"Hey, I'm sorry. Please come back. I'm in trouble because I have no money." "Wait, that's it? I'll remarry you. That should work, right? If we remarry, you'll have the responsibility to take care of me, right? This will settle everything. Now, hurry up and do the housework and cook for me."
"Ugh.
Why do you think I would be happy to get back together with you and take care of you?"
I refuse.
Absolutely not. If you keep bothering me like this, I will call the police.
I really hope this is the last time he contacts me. It turns out David had been trying to please Nancy by showering her with gifts. Purses, earrings and other accessories, and even the down payment for a luxury car. That's why he embezzled money from his company. Nancy was aware of David's ulterior motives and exploited them fully. Despite everything being exposed, I still can't understand why David and Anthony can't detach themselves from Nancy. One day, Susan said, "Maybe Nancy is what they call a community crusher?" After some research, I found out that this refers to someone who destroys interpersonal relationships within communities like company organizations, university clubs, mom-friend groups, or neighborhood associations. Characteristics include a distorted need for approval, being aggressive and critical towards others. While I'm not sure if Nancy fits the description perfectly, there seem to be many similarities. But as for me, all I can do now is to live my life without any involvement with Nancy and her ilk. Now, they're known in the neighborhood as a problematic family living in a famous garbage house, constantly arguing with each other. Given Nancy's extravagant tastes, the monthly mortgage on the garbage house is apparently quite high. It's said they're falling behind on the payments and will likely lose their home to foreclosure soon. As for me, I'm living alone peacefully in an apartment near Susan's house. I've improved a lot at gardening on my balcony, thanks to learning from social media. I sometimes do part-time jobs in gardening at local parks or botanical gardens, and also participate in volunteering. One of my joys is occasionally babysitting my grandchild and having meals with Susan's family. Susan's husband is a gentle person and is kind to me. I'm very grateful. Looking back, perhaps my late husband William helped expose the true nature of David and Nancy. This experience made me reflect on how I always felt inferior and never took action before. As a result, I've been hurt, and more importantly, I made Susan suffer for a long time. If I'm this hurt, Susan, who was just a child then, must have suffered even more. I also feel sorry for Anthony. From now on, I plan to think for myself and associate with people who value me and whom I value. It's never too late to start. My life is surely just beginning.